Starsky and Hutch certainly wasn't just another cop show of the 70s. In fact, it transformed the landscape for those shows altogether with its liberal attitude to on-screen violence. An attitude that wasn't shared by its predecessors. And you're about to see it make its intention clear in the very first scene of the very first episode. Starsky and Hutch was an unexpected phenomenon of pop culture that kicked the door wide open for its successors in the 80s, shows that were full of high-octane car chases, gun-toting action, and violent arrests. Its youthful stars became the heroes of young boys and the pin-ups of young girls. The show was watched by hundreds of millions of fans worldwide every week, and most of those fans had given a cool reception to the cop shows that went before it. The show's predecessors in the 1970s, as legendary as they were, could only be described as sedate by comparison. The lead character was usually middle-aged and far more inclined to talk his way into an arrest than let his fists do the talking.
One more thing.
Columbo was loved by my parents, but such cerebral cop shows were not must-watch TV for this 11-year-old when Starsky and Hutch first hit British screens in 1976. That boy needed a lot more action if he was going to make a cop show his new favourite. Sedate and cerebral police series were the norm too in early 70s Britain until another groundbreaking TV offering first aired. I've twinned that show with Starsky and Hutch because they both shared the same attitude towards screen violence.
Kenny Jarvis.
It was called The Sweeney, and it starred the great John Thor as the over-aggressive detective Jack Regan, years before his claim to international fame as the more genteel Inspector Morse. But my loyalty belonged to Starsky and Hutch, and I wanted to prove that loyalty by winning victory for them in an opinion poll that we were asked to conduct at school one day. I expected my classmates to choose our heroes over the Sweeney in a comfortable victory, but I'm sorry to tell my fellow fans out there that both Starsky and Hutch were given a severe beating by the ever-angry Jack Regan. Starsky and Hutch and the Sweeney were winners, though, especially when it came to attracting a younger audience. And I suspect that the shows had more in common than a change in attitude and a loyal partnership, because I believe that both were inspired by the same source material, and I'll reveal that source soon. Another memory I have of Starsky and Hutch is of watching it for the first time and seeing one of its customary punch-up scenes. Such scenes were so unusual in cop shows back then that I begged my older brother to come down from his bedroom to watch. He was cynical while he waited to see what the fuss was about, but it wasn't long before another lashing of unnecessary violence kicked in, and he was as enthralled as I was.
All right, folks, all right. Time we set up some new lines of communication here.
The show was the brainchild of multiple award-winning writer William Blinn. He would often cite the 1974 film Busting as his main inspiration, but I think the real inspiration for Starsky and Hutch and The Sweeney was a film that was made by The Exorcist director William Friedkin and released in 1971. The French Connection.
All right, Popeye's here. Get your hands on your heads. Get off the bar and get on the wall. Come on, move. Move.
I think it was Friedkin's Oscar-winning film that sowed the seeds of violent change in the world of TV cop shows. But another kind of change came a year before the arrival of Starsky and Hutch, a change of youth and gender, in the irresistible shape of Angie Dickinson and her lead role as Pepper Anderson in Police Woman. And fresh young faces would also be cast to fill the roles of the new dynamic duo. Ironically, Paul Michael Glaser and David Soul were no strangers to the cop shows that preceded theirs. They'd both appeared in separate episodes of Cannon and the Streets of San Francisco. Soul played a major role in his episode of the latter, alongside Michael Douglas no less. He also made appearances in Ironside and Macmillan and Wife, whereas Glaser appeared in the Rockford Files and had his own major role opposite Telly Savalas in an episode of Kojak.
Look, I'm leaving the door open. There's a police station.
They had cast the perfect actors for both parts, and the bond that they displayed on screen was real, and it would lead to a lifelong friendship between the two in the real world. But there were 4 well-drawn regular characters in this show, not just Starsky, not just Hutch. The irrepressible Huggy Bear was so popular with fans that he was in danger of turning the duo into a trio, or perhaps even getting his own spin-off show. And the tough, no-nonsense but caring Captain Dobie was a key player throughout the show's 4-season run, and it simply wouldn't have been as good without him. But the show itself, certainly in its first season, was far from perfect.
We felt safe in doing the pilot because we didn't feel it was going to go.
The writing was bad. It was awful.
I have to agree. I bought this Season 1 box set for my collection a few years ago, and revisiting the show was something of a revelation because there were quite a few poorly written and sloppily made episodes in its original outing. That wouldn't have bothered me when I was a kid because I was in it for the action, but it came as quite a shock now that I'm older. There were also some great episodes in Season 1, and my personal favourite is The Fix because it illustrates how good this show was when it played the buddy card. Not just between Starsky and Hutch, mind you, but between all 4 regular cast members. I'll try to take a snapshot of the relationship between the 4 of them in the recap of The Fix that I'm about to show you. Interestingly, it's an episode that I wasn't given the chance to watch on its original TV run in the 70s because the BBC banned it from broadcast for its drug addiction storyline. In the case of this particular episode, and David Soul's convincing portrayal of a drug addict, I can almost sympathise with the BBC.
What's your name? What's your name?
Hutchinson! What's yours, you lousy creep?
I'll be so happy when you get here.
The episode opens with Hutch falling in love with a girl he helped into a safe house in an attempt to hide her from a local gangster who thinks he owns her. He arranges to stay with her at the house in his coming days off. At his apartment, Hutch is attacked and knocked unconscious by 3 henchmen of the gangster, who then take him to a secret location and beat him to obtain the whereabouts of the girl. The head henchman, called Monk, is played by Jeffrey Lewis, who will later star with David Soul in Salem's Lot. In the next room, the gangster Ben Forrest, played by Robert Loggia, is displeased that his hoods are unable to beat the information he needs from Hutch, and he orders Monk to try a different approach.
We string him out. We get him hung up on horse.
Forrest's henchmen get back to work and begin the process of getting Hutch addicted to drugs in the hope of gaining the information they need by withdrawing his regular fix in the following days. Starsky starts to worry when Hutch fails to return from his vacation, and he searches his apartment for clues.
Do you take your gun out with you when you go on a date?
Hutch wouldn't visit his mother without his gun.
Meanwhile, after days of drug fixes, Hutch is clearly addicted and weakened.
Don't go. How'd you got help? Don't go. Hey.
They deny him his fix when Hutch still refuses to give Forrest the girl's location, but after more prompting, he finally breaks.
What beach?
While Starsky fruitlessly seeks information from Mickey the Snitch on Hutch's whereabouts, Forrest finds his prey at the beach house. She asks him what he's done to Hutch, and he answers,
You'll see, baby.
The girl, whose character name is Jeannie Walton, played by Lee Christian, offers to go with Forrest willingly if he sets Hutch free. Forrest agrees to the deal and leaves with her in his car, but not before secretly ordering his goons to take Hutch for a ride, kill him, and dispose of the body. Hutch escapes the car in a panic after overhearing how Monk and his colleagues plan to do that. He's spotted by police officers, and a patrolling Starsky hears about it on his radio and speeds to his location. Starsky doesn't want the authorities to know that Hutch has been damaged by illegal drugs and decides to take matters into his own hands and fix his friend.
This didn't happen.
Starsky calls on Huggy for the use of an apartment above one of his joints, where Hutch can go through a withdrawal process that Huggy knows will be
nothing but sweat and pain for the next 48 hours.
You gotta make it, huh? Big lummox.
Meanwhile, Forrest is furious with Monk for allowing Hutch to escape, and he demands that he finds Hutch and assassinates him.
I want you to take him out!
Starsky and Huggy work together to help Hutch through his agonized withdrawal, and Huggy becomes aware that Hutch is being hunted. In a heated conversation with Starsky, he remembers the name of one of Forrest's goons, which is at least of some use to Starsky. And he also reveals that he gave away Jeannie's location in return for a fix.
I wanted Jeannie. I think I told them where she was.
Hutch's withdrawal symptoms begin to ease, but he's still very weak.
Huggy, you're beautiful.
I know, but you and Hutch look awful.
Captain Dobie.
Morning. Well, I think the patient's gonna survive.
Starsky. It's good.
Starsky asks Captain Dobie to check a license plate number given to him by Huggy, information that will ultimately lead him to Monk. Starsky leaves to check out the address connected to the license plate number, missing the next call from Dobie, which is answered by Huggy. Dobie reveals that he received a call from Mickey the Snitch, who claims that he has information regarding Hutch.
Also, Huggy, I appreciate what you're doing for my boys.
Against Huggy's advice that Mickey can't always be trusted, Hutch wants to meet with him and borrows money from Huggy for a cab. But Huggy is right about Mickey, because he has one of Forrest's goons in tow. Starsky tracks down Monk but manages to lose him in a car chase. Then he receives word that Mickey has information for him.
Mickey had a message for you. Did you get it?
Got it now.
Hutch is already with Mickey, but he isn't in the best of shape. Forrest's goon takes him outside with the intention of pumping him with a fatal dose of heroin. Hutch regains his senses and starts to run, but now finds himself trapped in an alley by Monk. He tries to find safety, but all seems lost until the Ford Gran Torino screeches into the scene, and a gunfight ensues. Monk loses, and Starsky is relieved to find Hutch safe.
What is this?
At the end, Starsky and Hutch arrest Forrest while he tries to escape, taking Jeannie with him. Hutch and Jeannie both know that they have no real future together now, and Hutch is the one with the courage to end the relationship.
We're gonna end it.
The only thing that puzzles me was why this episode was shown so early in the run, at episode 4. Surely it would have been more effective to air it later that season, to add depth to the characters and their relationships once the show had established its action-packed credentials. Both Glaser and Soul had successful careers after Starsky and Hutch. Glaser continued acting, as well as developing the directorial skills he learned by directing 5 episodes of the show. He also directed 3 episodes of Miami Vice in the 1980s. I'm posting this video only weeks after the sad death of David Soul in January 2024, and this documentary that I've added to my Starsky and Hutch playlist will tell you a lot more about his troubled path to fame.
I'd like him to be happy. I'm sorry.
I'll leave a link to that playlist in the description of this video. You'll also find the full version of this video in that playlist.
Without a statue might on these lines fly for the last time into space, and your flight near to the sea. O dark captain, defeated in my country, may your proud wings still soar above the final wave, the wave of death.